two top 10 matchups, one in the SEC, one in the ACC, which I'll admit takes a little calibrating considering that Notre Dame has kind of been an honorary member of the ACC for the past few years in football. And just for this year has assumed the mantle as a full ACC member. Not sure how you go back to being an independent after that, but we'll see. Let's start with Clemson, Notre Dame, 1-4. Clemson without Trevor Lawrence tonight. It's DJ Uiagalelei tonight. He was terrific last week against Boston College. Andrew, this is a fascinating game. I'm greatly looking forward to it. And it's at South Bend. I was talking with Andrew Galata about this week. I feel like most of Clemson's regular season big games of the last 5 years or so have been at home. That's a conspiracy theory. I don't have any hard data to back that up, but I'm going with it. It's true. I've decided that it's true. But Andrew, nonetheless, looking forward to this one.
Yeah, and you made a great point in our headline segment just now with Sam Davis when you mentioned the fact that it's not really so much the games that are canceled or postponed that had the biggest effect on the college football playoff, but the players that can't play in certain spots. And without Trevor Lawrence, if you're Clemson, you're going in, even as good as DJ Uiagalelei has been, you are going in with the hand tied behind your back without the reigning Heisman and the prohibitive #1 pick in this upcoming NFL draft. So again, if Clemson were to lose to Notre Dame, and there's a possibility they can, and there's a possibility that Alex Walls would be correct in his guarantee about the Fighting Irish. For Clemson, I guess they could sit back on the fact that they could see them again down the road in the ACC championship game. But Jimmy, if you're Clemson and you lose tonight, and then you don't end up making the playoff because of this loss, and let's say Notre Dame wins out and they take one of those 4 spots, I think a team like Clemson would have a huge gripe with the NCAA by saying, hey, we lost our best player, and when he came back, if they run the table and they end, 9-1, they're going to be pointing to that and saying, hey, that one loss was without our best player. We should still be in the playoff. So again, a lot of ramifications if Clemson does indeed lose. But that's interesting you say that, though, that a lot of their big games are in Death Valley, because I feel the same way. I remember that game against Louisville with Deshaun Watson and Lamar Jackson going back and forth. That was in Death Valley. So while you don't have any evidence, I think we've seen in this country that people can still make outrageous claims without any evidence whatsoever. So, Jimmy, I can't knock you for that. I think there might be something to it. But if you're Notre Dame, this is your chance. If you can take Clemson out tonight, your path is clear. It is a yellow brick road to the CFB. So for the Fighting Irish, they're going to take all their gold, put it in the pot, and see if they can make their way to the CFB, and it starts tonight.
And let's also be real. This is not, the true road game, full-fledged environment. It's not going to be that. Notre Dame has some fans, but not anywhere near capacity. So it's not going to be, headed into a rocky environment. I think the biggest road game I can remember for Clemson, they played, there were a couple in 2017. They played Louisville on the road, knocked them around, and then they played Virginia Tech. And people overhyped that game because Virginia Tech just was not square for that at all. And it was a rocking environment. And Virginia Tech comes in with Enter Sandman, and everybody loses their mind. That's not happening here tonight. Okay, that's nothing against Notre Dame. It's just 2020. There are limitations on how crazy you can get. We're not going to see that tonight. We're not going to see that for the rest of this year, whether that's at Notre Dame or anywhere else. That being said, you've got a primetime game that a lot of the country is watching, particularly now that other things in America have been settled. And, it's a huge pressure environment for a young quarterback. And that's where I go to DJ Uiagalelei. And is he square? Is he in a good position for this moment? My argument would be yes. I think we saw him last week. He was terrific in that game. Everybody was going into that game thinking Clemson's going to have to win this in spite of him. Quite the opposite. He was tremendous, and that was a big part of the reason why Clemson won that game, because their defense gave up a lot of yards, particularly in the first half, and then the second half, they really took over. But I think he's going to be ready for this, and I look forward to seeing what he can do against this Notre Dame defense. And I think this is a big part of why I feel good about Clemson tonight, is watching that last week and seeing how he fared. So I think he's going to be able to do it again.
Yeah, and when you factor in that there's going to be a limited capacity for a freshman, that's big because you're not feeling that atmosphere that you would if South Bend was rocking on a Saturday night. You're not having to feel that. So for DJ Uiagalelei, he has that opportunity where he doesn't have to worry about the fans, and Dabo is going to put him in a position where the throws are going to be easy, a lot of running plays, because what he showed against BC is that he can beat you up the middle. He is 6'5", 250 plus maybe. I mean, just a big body, and Dabo used him perfectly, especially in the second half, just running it down Boston College's throat. So again, if you're Clemson, you got to keep it simple for DJ, make things, I don't want to use the word vanilla, but keep the offensive scheme simple enough where he can at least execute, play in, play out. And we know that Clemson defense is going to be ready to roll, and they're always ready. So again, as bad of a spot as people would think not having Trevor Lawrence that Clemson is in right now, they aren't really. They have the talent. They have a great quarterback who was a top 10 recruit out of his class. So again, Dabo still has enough to beat Notre Dame. And I think that just says a lot about what Clemson has been able to do. Much like Alabama, their second and third stringers, Jimmy, are just 4- and 5-star athletes. So it's really easy to plug in and put guys in when you have those type of recruits year in and year out. So for Clemson, they still have enough to win this game easily. But for Notre Dame, this is your best chance to make a statement and say, hey, we're not really part of the ACC in football, but the one year that we're in the conference, we can steal it away and then go back to being an independent and always have that hanging over the ACC conference that when we were in, we won the championship.
Yeah, I think this is statement time for Notre Dame and statement time for Brian Kelly. Let's be honest about that too. He has, I think, probably a worse perception in big games than what the reality is. Not that the reality is good, but this is a Notre Dame team. He got them to the national title game in 2012. To his everlasting credit, they got hammered by Alabama. He got them to the college football playoff in 2018. They went to the semifinal, got hammered by Clemson. And part of that, let's just be real, is that there is a gulf between Clemson and Alabama, and last year it was LSU, and the rest of the sport. It's just the fact of the matter. But at some point, you got to go out there and you got to win a big game. And this is as good a chance as they've had. You're at home. You've got Clemson without their starting quarterback, who is the best player in America. And you have – it's in front of you right now. You win this game, you win out, you're going to go to the college football playoff, and you could be ranked number one. Yep. That's not an insane proposition, if Alabama were to trip up at some point. So it's in front of Notre Dame, but I've got questions about them offensively. Can Ian Book do enough for them? I don't know what the answer to that is, but I still think Clemson's more talented. That's just where I come at it. And to tip my hand here, that's why I'm going to pick Clemson, because I just feel a lot better about their overall talent level.
Well, my heart wants Alex Walls to win this bet, but my mind is telling me that DJ Uiagalelei is going to have a good game, and Clemson's going to end up winning by double digits. Just because, when you think about Brian Kelly, I think about that Alabama and that national championship game, and everyone's talking about, all right, Notre Dame is back, and Brian Kelly has brought him back to prominence. They're going to be here year in and year out. They get smoked by Alabama, and I just don't think that program has been the same since. And you're right, Brian Kelly, the perception for big games for him, it's going to land on tonight. If he can win tonight, that perception changes. And if he doesn't, then I think people, amongst, Notre Dame fans, alumni, boosters, they might start wondering to themselves, is Brian Kelly really it? This guy doesn't win us the big games when we need it. Do we really need him at the helm moving forward? I think for him, it might be make or break, considering whatever happens going forward. If they were to lose and Notre Dame again loses another big game, I just don't know how long Notre Dame can stay with Brian Kelly, because as we know, this is a program that's built on dominance, that's won in the past, and that hasn't been the case. And when they were there, they got blown out. So for Brian Kelly, huge ramifications if he doesn't win tonight, I think.
I will say I'm also taking Clemson. So our producer, Alex Walls, has Notre Dame. Sam Davis has Notre Dame. You and I, Andrew, both have Clemson. And I think I will say the perception's a little unfair on Brian Kelly. Let's remember, this is a Notre Dame program that is 2 coaches removed from Tyrone Willingham. So, that you can say what you want. And yes, they have not shaped up in big games. I will grant you that. But you also have to remember like where Notre Dame was before this. And it wasn't nowhere, but it also was not great. And they weren't, in contention in big games. The best year I could think of before Brian Kelly was probably 2005, the year with the Bush push. So I think I think that perception's a little unfair because of what Brian Kelly has done in terms of they play a good schedule. That's obviously part of it, but also like I think it is a little unfair to him because they've built a good program. Like I feel like they are consistently in better shape now than they were 10 years ago. That being said, though, the perception is on Brian Kelly. I don't think it's going to change tonight. I think Clemson's going to go out there, get the victory.